So, Luke Cage. We have all seen it. Mm-hmm. This is spoiler warning now. I'll sort of step back for a minute because I've already put out a video with some of my general overall thoughts.
Which I did not watch because I didn't want that to inform our discussion yet.
Okay.
So. But I didn't watch it because I don't care. Took me 3 episodes to get into the show. Fell in love with Luke Cage. Liked him in Jessica Jones. Loved him in this. I think Mike Coulter is the reason to watch this show, along with a lot of other incredible talent supporting him. It was, and I can say this definitively, it was one of the first times I've watched a movie or TV show that has made me want to read the comic.
I felt the first episode was kind of weak, and after that I started getting into it, and I felt like the entire first episode I was waiting for Luke to do something, and it felt like the whole episode was just waiting for him to act, to do something, to be that hero. And I felt like throughout the series there were times when he backslid and had to be, and I felt like there were just times when you need to just pick him up with a forklift and drive him to the action so that he would fight and do something and be the hero. And it's interesting how you say that he's the thing to watch about this, because I'm not sure about that. And I wonder if, and it's not a criticism against the actor. I like the actor. I like the way he embodies it. He's got a natural presence and this charisma and this charm. I do want to watch him, but there were times when I felt like they weren't giving him the materials he needed to be a leading man. And I felt so often like I was more interested in the supporting cast. And I was a lot more interested in Misty Knight's quest as this detective. And that's why Luke always needed a partner. That's why Claire Temple, the night nurse, showed up halfway through the season to sort of beat the sounding board, because he's the type of character who doesn't say anything. He doesn't tell you what's on his mind. He's not a verbose, talkative character. What I did like was all of the other things. The look of the show, the style, the sound, the music, the blackness of this show. I liked a lot. For me right now, this is my second favorite of the Netflix series. I think Daredevil Season 1 is my first.
Easy. 1, 2, Daredevil, Luke Cage. But go ahead, Nathaniel.
This is my least favorite Netflix show.
Okay. It's on.
It is. Now, so starting with Mike Coulter, talking Luke Cage.
Yep.
I think if he had a weakness, when he had to get dramatic, it tended to fall flat. When I loved him was when he was being cheesy. I love Luke Cage being cheesy, and I loved Claire pointing out every time he was being cheesy. I love that. Yeah. That was awesome. But I thought he was fine as a leading man. Almost all my issues, and my issues are sort of several layered, but they pretty much all orbit problems I have with the villains.
Okay.
None of which are problems with performances. Okay. My problem with the first half, when we're dealing with Cottonmouth, who was a very good character and a very good performance, but he never felt like a threat to Luke Cage. Right. Then Cottonmouth dies. Impossibly my favorite scene in the entire show. But then we got Diamondback. Now, Diamondback got an awesome initial intro, showing up and going, "Can you dig it?"
Yeah.
When he did that, I'm like, I'm on board with this guy. And then everything that happened after that, I'm like, and I'm off. I am no longer on board with this guy. I think the whole idea of him being Luke's brother serves no function whatsoever. It has 0 point. His motivations were ridiculous. His outfit at the end was stupid. My problem with the first half was the villains, while engaging characters, weren't a threat to him. Then in the second half, we get a villain who is a threat to him, but I didn't like as a character.
I didn't have that problem. I liked Diamondback. I loved Eric LeRae Harvey's performance. And almost the same thing with Alfred Whittard as Black Mariah.
Oh, she was my favorite of the 3 villains.
She was mine too, but it was another thing where I felt like they would bring her to the edge and then they would pull her back again. And like after like the moment when she snaps, when she kills Cottonmouth, and then she goes home and she looks at the picture of Mabel and sort of sees her own face superimposed in that. I was like, this is great. And it felt like by the next episode, they had forgotten about that.
Yes.
So I like you said, I never had a problem with the performance of the characters. I felt like sometimes there was just an inconsistency in how the villains were written. I was okay with Diamondback's costume at the end just because it was a little... It did look kind of silly and it didn't look like it belonged, but I understood the function for it and how it was supposed to be this weird kind of modified suit that gave him these powers. Yeah, I thought that last episode was a little bit weaker.
Yeah.
And that fight didn't need to be as long as it was. I do have problems with this, but there was enough about it that I liked that I'm able to ignore some of those problems.
I thought that the death of Cottonmouth was one of the highlights of the show. I also thought it happened too early, maybe, in the season, because it felt like the Diamondback stuff was rushed. Because they were trying to introduce a lot of really big emotional notes with him.
Yeah.
That I was like, wait a minute. They're like, he knows him or he doesn't know him, and like, what is going on? And they have this connection, and I'm like, and they kept teasing him, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want Cottonmouth back. I would like.
I'm also not sure how I feel about Shades.
I actually really like Shades.
Okay.
I liked him a lot.
I hated Shades. I thought Shades sucked the air out of every scene he was in. I thought his performances were completely flat. I thought his costume was ridiculous most of the time.
Just wearing black.
His glasses. I thought
crying out loud.
I thought they were a stupid gimmick and that they didn't work.
I thought Shades was a fantastic henchman. I liked what he brought out of other people in scenes that when he was in with them. I liked how when he was in a room with Cottonmouth got on edge because he knew what that guy represented. I liked how when he was in scenes with Mariah that he was teasing out this more vindictive side of
this stuff with Mariah because
I thought they had fantastic chemistry.
Yeah, because he was being patronizing to her the entire time.
Yes, and she called him on it.
And they had this weird sort of inverted Macbeth relationship where he's almost the Lady Macbeth character, where he knows he can't be the figurehead. She's in the position where she can be the face and the name behind their brand. But he needs to convince her that she needs to be evil enough. She needs to get her hands dirty and bloody. And he needs to provoke her and manipulate her into doing that. And the gender reversal from that dynamic just felt kind of unusual to me. And
it was unusual, but that was part of why I liked it.
So we'll agree to disagree on this.
I like that.
As we so often do.
I didn't like when they tried to infuse some sort of sexual chemistry in his attraction to her.
I didn't need that.
Like
that was unnecessary. Now, here's something, because you sort of commented on the blackness of the show overall, and which I'm not going to disagree with you on, and I think is a strength of the show, but I think my own, because I don't know if you're aware of this, I'm not black, so but I feel like my ability to connect with that aspect of it is hampered somewhat. For whatever reason, you were able to connect with that end of it. Because I mean, I've never really been into blaxploitation movies and that, and you don't have to be black to enjoy this stuff. But I've never sort of steeped into that. I'm not into rap. I've never that's never been my world. That's never been something I've gravitated towards. So when I watch something like this, I can recognize that stuff is good. But for me, it doesn't paper over the flaws. And I feel like for you, that vibe was strong enough that it carried over some issues. That is not a criticism of the show. That is me explaining part of why I personally couldn't
you might not have been the target audience.
Oh yeah, I fully accept that whole aspect of the show was not aimed at me, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. I think for that reason, that might be part of why I'm more critical of these things. Some of which, I mean, you're not even arguing with me are weaknesses, but obviously bothered me more than you.
I've always loved Motown, and I have a little bit more of an appreciation of hip hop. The soul music that was infused in the show, I love that, and some of the blaxploitation elements, I did connect with those. Seeing that in one of these shows or one of these movies that we have not seen yet did feel like a breath of fresh air, and I was able to just purely not being from that world, but having an appreciate liking that enough that the problems that I had with it bothered me less because there were more elements that I did enjoy and that I did feel were done really well.
Well, I mean, I think that's true of most entertainment. If something connects with you on an emotional level, you're going to be much more willing to forgive, the technical flaws of something.
So I wanted to talk about my favorite episode, if I can. This is all about me. The prison episode, where I think
flashbacks to Seagate.
Yeah, I really, for some reason, I just really enjoyed that whole sequence. Maybe it was just the beard. There was one scene where it walked in ahead of him, and like 2 seconds later he came
walks in.
I really enjoyed a lot of that episode. And go ahead.
Is that your least favorite part?
I was bored. I was really bored.
And somewhere in between, I was looking at the similarities and differences between the comic book origin and what was there.
So there were a couple of supporting roles that we haven't talked about yet.
Yep.
The big one being Misty Knight.
Who
Loved
was
her.
phenomenal.
Yes.
And she's a character that I've always liked. I like in the comics, the Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, who we got a teaser that Claire grabs like a thing of like
Yes.
like self-defense training from
Yep.
Colleen Wing. She is going to be an Iron Fist. They've
Cool.
confirmed that. They've cast her. I really Misty Knight was the character I was the most intrigued by. I liked her more than I liked Luke. I thought the times when she blew up and she reacted poorly were done well. I thought they were believable. I liked the one episode where she's in the box with the shrink.
She was phenomenal, and her chemistry with Luke was really, really good.
Well, and part of Misty Knight's story, I was surprised how much I liked her partner.
Scarf? Okay, Frank Wiley?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of that came down to the performance. Now, the moment
We should be switching scenes. We're missing the thing where you two are on polar opposites.
I enjoyed his performance again. I thought his chemistry, particularly with Misty, was very good. I thought they played off each other very well. I liked the eventual backstory that we got to him. I liked the sort of the unspoken implication of he didn't become corrupt because he's like a bad guy, but because he had no reason not to anymore.
When she tells the other corrupt cop, when she mentions how his son died, or like just found his gun when he hadn't secured it, I loved her line that Scarf tells a lot of jokes, but he never smiles. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, oh gosh. Oh, I wish you would told me that about him before he died.
So I didn't like Scarf a lot, and
because he was white.
I didn't like the energy between the two of them. I didn't think they had any chemistry between him and Misty. But I'll back up a little bit. I did like him later.
Okay.
He grew on me as a character and an actor, and I want to attribute it to writing.
There were times when I felt like his dialogue or his performance was coming off just a little bit too stiff. It was just. Yeah, I like the character, but again, maybe similar to you, it took me a couple episodes to warm up to him because I just felt like and maybe it was intentional because he was the cop and he was the outsider, he was white, like he didn't fit into this world. He was kind of brushing up against everybody, sort of clashing with them, and maybe that was intentional. They were trying to show that, but it felt like he didn't establish a rhythm with the rest of the group until 2 episodes in, maybe.
Night Nurse.
Yep.
Who... it's just she's so wonderful to watch.
I've never seen Rosario Dawson in a movie where I was like, oh, that was... She's been in some bad movies, but she is always a highlight in whatever I've seen her in.
And they've given her something different to do every time. This is her fourth. This is her fourth go around in this world. She always has a different role, but it's always feels organic.
She is one of the most genuine actors I've seen working today.
So, despite the fact that for a very long time his comic book was Hero for Hire, did it bug anyone else how far out of their way they went to be like, no, he will never accept money? And I'm like, that's kind of his thing. Like, what?
Yeah,
Like, how many times is he gonna turn down people giving him money? And I get that they're doing the noble thing, but it's like, are we ever gonna get a status quo where he is the hero for hire? Because it seems like you're really hammering that will never be the case.
I have a feeling that will change after the Defenders, assuming that he gets a second season, or assuming they might do some sort of switch up. But I have a feeling the barbershop, because it ends with Fish saying maybe this place just shouldn't be a barbershop, I have a feeling that will be retro-converted into a private investigation office, or the home base of Heroes for Hire, which might be Luke, it might be Luke and Iron Fist, it might be Jessica Jones. She might work, if they somehow work together and come back as a couple or something. I have no idea if they will. It might be Misty Knight and Colleen Wing working together. All of these characters have sort of floated around the Heroes for Hire title in the comics over the last couple of decades. And I have a feeling that location will return as their base. I don't know who will occupy it.
Loved the fall of called Fort Knox.
Yes,
What a fun sequence that was to watch.
that was the action highlight, and I think honestly it was the only action scene that really worked because the problem was part of it was a lack of stakes because by and large most of the action scenes he just stood there until they were out of bullets and then he beat people up. His assault on that building was over the top enough to overcome that by just going big. But then later, even when they had stuff that could hurt him, like, well, he got shot and then just stumbled away. All right. Like, aside from that one, which I did really like, I was bored by pretty much every other action scene.
Yeah, I wanted the Judas bullets to amp up that. I just never really... I understood that he could be hurt, but... I don't know.
Once they were mass produced for the cops, did we ever see them go off? Like,
Nope.
they never shot because at that point, if they did, he's not bulletproof.
So it's like you had a SWAT team worth of cops all holding Chekhov's gun, and none of them went off.
I thought that was a weird direction for the story to go in because you've now taken the one thing he can do,
right,
and now he can't do that. So, although I did love that scene with it. I think it was Mariah and Cottonmouth were talking, and she was like, "Does he have gills?"
Drown him,
burn him. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god!"
Well, that was one of her great turns where it's like, "Oh my god!" She like somewhere underneath this more respectable veneer, she is possibly even more vicious than he is.
Oh, and some of my favorite scenes were actually the flashbacks to her and Cottonmouth as kids growing up with Mabel.
Those were some of the more memorable moments.
When she like grabs the kid and like snips his finger off with like the pruning shears and everything. Like, whoa.
I have to say that the cameo that I kept really wanting was like Idris Elba to just kind of walk in. I wouldn't need much, like just like drinking coffee in the back or...
Well, instead they got Method Man doing
Oh my god!
Love. Did his own rap. He made up a new rap for the show, Bulletproof Love.
During that scene I was like, is that's... Oh my god!
And I love that they switch hoodies.
Well, I love how proud he is to have Luke Cage's shot up hoodie.
And I love that becomes a thing. Like people like in Harlem are like now like they're wearing these like bullet riddled hoodies as like a merchandising item, and it's making the cops' job harder.
Right.
I the first time he said "Sweet Christmas," I stood up and applauded.
I think he said it a few too many times after that.
He did it, and I think there was actually it was an unfortunate placement where I think he said it at the end of one episode and then said it again early in the beginning of the very next episode,
which is a bad idea when you binge these
exactly.
things.
Right. So just like the fact that they came on top of each other, then it was like all of a sudden I noticed I'm like, okay, they're overusing it. The last thing I just kind of wanted to like mention this as talking about the character himself, not necessarily as specific to the show, but I think the show kind of pays homage to this. Is I've always found the character as conceived in the comics is sort of the Black Captain America, which is not to say that his story is the same as Steve Rogers' story, or that you put him in the costume and he's the same type of character as Captain America, because he's not. What I've meant by that is that his story sort of models the Black experience in America, and that his origin is that he was wrongfully incarcerated. He was taken away from his home, put in chains, put in prison, and then subjected to these experiments more or less against his will, or with this understanding of potential freedom. He was mistreated, and then he is a fugitive who is hunted, who has to hide his identity. And I think that does speak to 300-400 years of the Black experience in this country on a very, very micro level. So I think this was a good show to represent that. And I think, at Comic-Con, the showrunner, Chio Coker, said it better than anybody. It's like, we've never needed a bulletproof black man more than we do right now.
Yeah.
So I think just for the cultural, what this can do for society, I think is really good. I dig it. I want to see more of this character. I'm looking forward to the next round.
I'm certainly looking forward to the character again. Again, I liked him. I'm looking forward to Defenders. I'm more up for a second season of this than I am of Jessica Jones, because I feel like there are places to go with him. Whereas again, I loved Jessica Jones, but that felt like such a finished story.
Right. Agreed.
I did like it quite a bit, and I do want to see where they go from here, and I'm very excited for Luke Cage. I'm excited for him to be in the public consciousness, frankly.
So I think we will wrap it up there. You guys got anything to plug? I know you always have 50,000 podcasts. But Paul, you got anything?
Do you want to do your podcast?
No. All right, I got a number of podcasts. You can find them all on the Fire and Water Podcast at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
I am the lead writer on a comic book called Armadillo Justice for Rising Sun Comics, and I'm one of the writers and co-writers with Ryan Daly on Red and Green Comics, which you can also find on Rising Sun Comics.
And I'm one of the co-writers of Red and Green Comics, which you can find at Rising Sun Comics. I'm also the writer of My Pet Ninja, a web series on Rising Sun. And I misspoke earlier, it is the Fire and Water Podcast Network that I am a part of.
And while we're co-writers on Red and Green, it's actually Paul Scavitto and Ryan Daly co-writers on Red and Green Comics.
Until you read an issue and you actually see that my name does come first.
And it's really, if you put it in a mirror, though, you can actually see it.
And I'm the art director. I spend a lot more time working on it than Paul does.
And
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. You can follow me on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Check out the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check out my new podcast, Punch Like a Girl, which is also available on iTunes and Stitcher. That is a separate feed. And until next time, this council is adjourned.
Yeah.
Mic on and everything?
Yes.
Test.
Let Lily lick Lionel's lusty leathers. Let Lily lick Lionel's lusty leathers.
I'm going to put this at the end. I hope you both realize that.